Hi, welcome to our podcast. I'm Mary Abazia, and of course, with me is Tom Spitali and Sean Wellham. And we have been going through looking at our tools that we have used for decades, and now we're augmenting them with AI. And we're seeing how you, our friends and our clients, have been able to integrate AI into some of these tools and concepts. So today we're going to really go deep into positioning with AI, and Tom's going to kick us off.
Yeah, positioning has always been a little bit of a challenge for us as we kind of work through our workshops. People are tired by the time a good tired. But they've been through a lot of activities, all the way through, customer, competitor market analysis, and they figured out, where they're strong and weak relative to customer needs and even what their differential advantage strategy is going to be, and they get to positioning and we start talking about how positioning has to be unique, important, and believable. And we give them the framework, the templates, they go off and do it. And inevitably, it's not good enough. And it's really unpopular for us to say. We've all had our heads bit off by saying, man, you got to work, you got to go back to your breakout groups and do better. But inevitably, what the positioning is it's like, you know, the same thing that competitors are saying. It's kind of prosaic. It doesn't have any real punch. It doesn't bring out the strategy well enough or creatively enough. Here comes AI. And now what we're seeing is, especially if people can access AI in a workshop, we can let AI do the initial positioning draft, by prompting it to say, make sure it's unique, make sure it's important, make sure it's believable, make sure our competitors can't say the same thing. Use our ability to compete analysis, use anything that we've done to this point, our strategy to bring this alive. And what AI can do now, any AI program is render like a visual representation of the positioning with a really cool, powerful headline, subhead, and a visual, and it has re-energized how people do positioning. They get super excited, and the momentum continues. So that's what's really exciting about using AI for positioning. Mary, you said you had an example that you want to talk about an example?
Yeah. Let me we help companies do external marketing a lot, but we also there's this other thing called internal marketing, where one of the functions, maybe one of the analytical groups, feels like they don't really understand their partners' needs and how it connects to the customers. And so, we do a lot of internal research, and then we have those findings. And just recently, we were working with one of the groups. We had what the partners' needs were, and then the group did an exercise, which was where we are now from and where we're going to. And we took all of that information and put it into AI, and it came back with really, really good drafts of positioning, how this team would position themselves, so that it was clear within themselves because it was a big team, and then also with all the partners that they're working with. And it was like 95% there, and they just cleaned it up a bit. And it's the graphics are never perfect, but they're close enough that people start to go, oh yeah, that's what we want to say and communicate, and that's what we are as a group. So I just, it's so fun when you see it like instantaneously come alive. So Sean.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. I'm just thinking back to all those times, as Tom said, people get to positioning, and it can be sometimes quite a step up. And it's not just because they've been working hard. The way our workshops flow, they've put a lot of effort in before they get to positioning, right? So we're really stretching them. But it's a departure because a lot of what we do is very analytical. And when you get to positioning, you're starting to use that bit of creativity, that idea of think of something unique and believable. And we're very clear. We don't ask them to write copy. We don't try and make it into an advert or a headline. We just say, what is it you want to claim in the mind of your prospective customer? And that's a different way of thinking. So the other thing that AI does, it's like it defeats sort of writer's block. You can't think about what you want to say, and just giving those suggestions questions is a trigger, and it can be maybe not that, but it's reminded me of something else. So it performs a really useful function both in terms of our process, but also it's hard to be both analytical and creative. It requires a mindset shift, and AI doesn't have that hang up. It doesn't, it can switch between the two really easily. And the other thing I wanted to say about AI, I sometimes in workshops, I slightly modify the unique criteria because some people struggle with finding what is truly unique about our product, and it's sometimes quite hard. So we say, what about the unclaimed? It doesn't have to be unique, it's just unique to the customer. No one else is claiming it, no one else is using it. Even if it's common throughout the industry, if no one else has staked a claim, then it's unique to the customer. And that's where AI can also help, because it can do that sort of that trawl around the web and look at the competitive set, look at everyone's website and see what are people sort of positioning, and then look for those gaps, look for those niches, not necessarily in unique in the true sense of the word, but unique as in unclaimed territory that we can plant our flag on. I think it's really powerful for that too.
I love that. And I do think that left to their own devices, and again, with the fatigue factor setting in, uniqueness is the thing that's typically missing in the work that people have done in the past. We call it that. Well, Mary calls it something different. I call it the scratch out write in test. Mary calls it the scratch and sniff. I don't know how that evolved, Mary. But it is really the idea that if we say, can you scratch out your name on your positioning statement and put in your competitor's name, and can they say the same thing? And if so, then you're not unique. And so often, when we ask them to do that, they go sheepishly, "Oh yeah." But it is the same thing that everybody else is saying, and that becomes just like so much noise, like Charlie Brown's teacher, want, 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 want. Nobody hears that in
Yeah.
the marketplace. But in real time, if you have the use of an AI tool while you're doing this, and again, subject to all the work that you've done previously. So not just going to AI and just saying, hey, what's in the positioning statement for my company? But no, here's the target, here's what the target segment's needs are. Now help me, here's where we're strong, here's where we're weak. All that work and saying, come up with something that's unique. What AI systems can do is just in real time, look at what everybody else is saying and make sure that nobody else is making the same claim. And that's what's beautiful and powerful about it.
I like
Yeah.
that. And it not only is, what's happening now, but what I have liked that we've done is, for example, we had a medical device company that had what they thought was a decent draft of a positioning. And then we put it into AI and said, is this sustainable? And what are the risks of owning this? And it came back with some very tangible things like they need to make sure that they're deep in this expertise, that they make sure to communicate in this way, and that they don't do some of these things, which is, it became, because positioning can seem fluffy, but when you look at those things and you go, these are real things actions that we need to take in order to live this positioning. And if we fail, our positioning is going to fail. So I really liked, I haven't been able to do that before using AI to pressure test in that way.
The other thing that occurs to me with positioning, we always used to say, you're not writing copyright, you're not an advertising agency, but what you're doing is creating the brief that you'd want to give your advertising agency. You say, we want to be known as the people that do X for Y because of these reasons, and unlike other people, blah, blah. And you make this whole integrated positioning statement, but we say, but that's okay, that all you're doing is coming up with the idea. And do you remember we had some workshops a little while ago now? We would actually co-present or have with us creatives from an ad agency, and they would scribble and work up actual concepts from the positioning. That was really powerful. A little bit inefficient and not necessarily the cheapest way to do it, but we actually turned some positioning into the beginnings of an execution idea, an advertising or campaign idea. Well, that's the other thing that AI can do, right? You can actually say, develop the positioning, and if you've got time, and if that's where you want to go with the workshop, you can say, work up some conceptual advertising and some hook lines and some messaging around that. And you could either if AI evolves to this extent where it's a really good creative partner, you can use that straight into your social media and start to hit campaigns out instantly. Or if you're still a bit more traditional, you can take all that stuff, write a really detailed brief, and then hand that off to an execution agency. But it does allow you to move. We always say stop at positioning. You're not writing copy, but maybe you can now with AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing you can do from an execution standpoint is you can ask AI, this is the positioning and here are the segments. How do I communicate the positioning to these different, were you going to say this, Tom? How do you communicate? How does the salespeople, because that's a big part for B2B, is how do the salespeople communicate using this positioning to these different segments? And then also, how do we communicate, in other channels to this? And it really does give you a very practical guide to that.
It is so practical. We talk about the idea that you probably should, as a company, have an umbrella positioning, something that is relevant and powerful and presents your uniqueness and importance and believability to all your customers. But of course, then the execution and variations on the theme to different segments makes a lot of sense. But a lot of times those variations on the theme can seem disconnected, right? It's not all hooking back up to an overall umbrella positioning. Well, now, again, AI can help you draft all of that and make sure that it does indeed, all tie up to an overall umbrella positioning. And all of this is important because really, at the end of the day, and this is going back to the famous positioning gurus Reese and Trout when they wrote "Positioning: The Battle for Your Mind," which is a classic. In which, if you haven't read it, you've gotta read it. They had the thoughts about this 30 years ago that are still relevant today. People oversimplify how they position a company in their own brains. People that buy, they in many cases they associate one word or a short phrase with every competitor, even though they don't know they're doing it. And that one word or short phrase better be what you want it to be, right? And so it's important that that overall umbrella positioning be well thought through, executable, all that stuff. And if you get that part right, then the variations on the theme to the different segments are a lot easier. But AI makes this possible.
Yeah, one of the things that one of the fun projects that we got to work on was a company had a positioning, but they wanted to audit their own websites because there's all these. It's a B2B company, so they have all these product web statements about their their different product lines or platforms, and so we went in, we said to AI, go in with this positioning and see who, how well we are doing at communicating this. Give us a score. And it went in and said, a lot of these, 30% of the statements are very, internally focused, and, even less are focused on this positioning that you're trying to do. So it gave them a benchmark. So then they go and they say to the company, hey, you guys, we're all going to use this positioning, use this in your literature and on your, product websites. And then they can see if they're making progress, and that should correlate to better sales. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. It's exciting times.
Very cool. Very cool. Any closing thoughts?
Sean,
I could go with my usual one, which is the enhancement that AI gives us. It never replaces, it never does things for you. It helps you do things better and smarter. It doesn't work without the human. And I know I say this every time, but I really, it's a multiplier, not a replacement. So anyone out there who's worried about AI, taking away their job, I'm in charge of strategy here. What's this doing about my job? Just make you better at it. It's all these tools just take what we've got and multiply it up, and that's the advantage.
Three legs on
There's actually,
there's three legs
what
on
did you say?
Well, I'm just reinforcing what Sean is saying because it can't be said too many times. I'm glad Sean says it every time, and I hope he keeps doing it.
I wonder what I'll say next time. Maybe
So
I'll find a new way.
I went to a Caltech. I'm watching their Caltech is doing a lot on AI with their webinars, and it's called the human in the loop. That's what it's called, the human in the loop.
Well, I think the three legs of the stool are tools, AI, and humans. Those are the three legs. And what we continue to see, if all three of those things are in the mix, the right tools, a good AI platform and humans to massage it and refine it and make sure that it's right. That's the formula for success.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for joining us.